Welcome to the Bohannan Team podcast, where we talk about all things real estate. This is episode 2, and we're going to talk about the selling process, common misconceptions, and sellers' do's and don'ts. I'm Megan Bohannan.
I'm Emily Unnerstall.
I'm Rocio Rowe.
I'm Elizabeth Sasueta, aka Sally Navy.
All right, girls. I'm excited about episode 2, but I want to dive into it because I feel like there's so much to cover when you're getting your house ready to sell it. And our first scenario, we're just going to throw it out there. They found a house they absolutely had to have on Zillow. We showed it to them. They love it. But we talked to a lender and they need their equity from the house to purchase it. Now they're contingent. We need to get this home on the market yesterday so we can make this happen. So what do we do? What's our first steps?
Have a conversation with them, see what they're looking for, let them know what the process is. Okay, we're going to do listing photos. I'm going to have them rushed so we have them back within 24 hours and then just continue explaining the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna talk to that listing agent on the other side and beg and plead to let them know we can make this happen. We can have those photos back as soon as possible and all of that. But now we're sitting down with the seller because they want to get a good deal on the buy side. And now they're thinking, okay, but I want to get as much money as I can from this sale. So we gotta prep them right. We gotta find the best comps to get this home sold.
And we got to remind them that we can't list it too high or too low. We need to list it just right so we get the right attraction. Otherwise, it can sit on the market longer than they want it to.
Absolutely. And then, so if you're running comps, I try to do it exactly what like an appraiser is going to do. And they are a lot of agents think they can get more value for certain things, but we know in this market, appraised value is everything. And people are asking for stuff. They're trying to inflate the price on the home, saying like, well, what if we add closing costs, which is requested by the buyer, into, the purchase price, and it doesn't appraise, we're back at square one. So it's really important right now to know how to price a home and what the appraiser is probably gonna call out. So let's just get down to that. So we're looking at running comps. We're meeting with the seller. We're going back 6 months, but we just got through December. So that's going to skew it because we know nobody was buying in December. Rates were 7%. So right now I would go back just a few months, include December, but know that that's probably not the most accurate days on the market, time frame, and all of that. So it's really important to know if we just came out of a holiday, what's going on, what's our market trend, and all of that, so we can explain to that seller exactly what they need to be looking for to price it correctly. So
now in their case, because they are going to be selling their current home and purchasing another one, how is that offer going to work? Because it's going to be a contingent offer. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's tricky because number one, we're trying to convince that person to hold out for us, right? So there's a lot of pressure on us to do all the right things, but they're pretty much the if they're doing the contingency is it's complicated because we're trying to sell their house for the right price and try to keep them in place, because you also have to remember, where are they going to live in the meantime? There's so many different types of things. So we're just trying to tell that agent, we need to sell this home to have the equity to purchase the next one.
And when you write the contract, there's a space where it tells you my home will be listed and photos will be up within a specific time frame. That way they feel, oh, okay, because if you tell them, oh, it's not listed yet, they get a little scared. But if you have it on contract, we'll have pictures within 72 hours, then they should more than likely be okay with it.
Yeah. And if you're asking about the protection of that, we're letting that seller of the house that our clients want, they're made aware that we have to sell this home first. In other words, if we can't sell it, they're not liable to lose their deposit or anything because they already accepted our offer knowing we have to sell our home. So it's a protection. So I mean, I guess that answers your question better. It's like, what is the protection our clients have? And that's why it's hard to get somebody to agree to that, because we know that seller is taking on a lot of risk. So it's pretty scary. Yeah. But so now we have the comps. We came up with what would the market's trending towards price and all of the things for our seller. We show them what we think it will sell for, and then they say they want to list it high. What is something that you guys would do to convince them otherwise to get this home sold in a timely manner?
Well, sometimes depending on how much they're trying to sell it, because obviously a seller always says, oh, my house is worth more. But you have to remind them, compare it to things that are selling on the same street. Sometimes if the house next door is cheaper than theirs, someone's not going to want to purchase yours if the house across the street is worth less. And pricing it too high will make less people want to view it because they're going to see that it's so much more and across the street is less. So that's something to tell them, and remind them. If you have it too high, people won't come, and then we're going to have to start lowering it.
Yeah.
I like that idea too. And then a lot of times as well, you'll see that on the comps, you can show them, hey, this home was on the market. It actually sold for $50,000 less than asking price, and it sat on the market 227 days. You're in a hurry. You need to sell yours faster. So let's learn from that person's mistake.
Absolutely. Days on the market are going to be your best indicator. And if I'm going to convince this agent to take our contingent offer, I'm more worried about them knowing what the days on the market are, because they're going to counter us and they're going to say, we're going to give you, generously maybe 14 days to get this home sold. If the average days on the market are 29, I'm going to tell my client either we're wasting a lot of time here and possibly a deposit. If you really want this property, you need to know how to price this correctly. And we just came out of COVID. We know that people are getting multiple offers on homes and things are going into this crazy bidding war. That ship's kind of sailed too. So you cannot promise your seller you're going to get 10 offers, so we need to give them worst case scenario, best case scenario, and I think price that at that point.
So what you're saying is that the importance of pricing homes correctly is a big, big deal. Like, it's super important for sellers to listen to our advice and
it's huge.
Price their homes correctly.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's everything in life. People are going to buy the thing that's priced correctly. But that also goes into the fact of like, okay, now we know your home's, you agreed to the price, but it looks like, a hoarder lives here. We need to clean your home. There's going to be a lot of different things we get into. So now that they agreed on the price, we're going to list it competitively. We're going to go $5,000 less than the neighbor because they had theirs listed $5,000 more. We're going to try to be competitive with that. We got the price on lock. That's great. But now we're getting into, we need to get these photos done. We don't want Lindsay getting to the house saying, how am I going to photograph this house? So those are the things we got to get the seller and talk them through that. So one of the things I always tell a seller is we're not going to photograph your garage. Let's move all of your personal belongings and anything that will make the house look cluttered into the garage. Do you guys have any other things that you tell them pre-photos?
I do tell them, clean your mirrors. We know mirrors are a true telling of how somebody's home is kept. Clean your mirrors. Make sure that if you have a dog, don't leave your dog potty pads on the floor for us to pick up for you.
Cats, more cats.
Yes, more cats, yes. Hide the litter boxes, please.
As well as putting away any family photos you have on the walls, things like that. The clearer the home is, the better it is for the buyer to see themselves in that home. So when they see your family pictures on the wall, it's hard for them to envision themselves because they already see your family in that home.
100%. And Elizabeth is like the staging queen. Like, you're all about like the like how a buyer is going to visualize themselves there. So do you help your clients stage or?
I do sometimes. I feel like it's important to let them know in advance, hey, I'm going to have a professional photographer. Some people have never sold their house before, so they have no idea. They probably think we're going to take pictures with our phones.
That makes sense too.
Yeah, so maybe just giving them a heads up, hey, I'm going to have a photographer come in and take pictures. It's going to be all over my social media. It's going to be everywhere. So I think when they know that, they're like, oh, I really should clean my house because it's going to be everywhere.
And that's another thing as well, is like, it's our job to market the home well. I hear, and I've talked to Lindsay many times, and she goes, the agent never comes when I'm taking photos. And I'm like, well, how would you know? It's not the photographer's responsibility to make sure the house is in order. Right. And a seller, again, has never sold their home. So maybe they don't know that that's something that shouldn't be in the picture. I'm moving toothbrushes, toothpaste. Yeah. I'm doing a lot of different things and scurrying around. I'm usually very sweaty when I go to take photos because I'm vacuuming if I have to.
You're hands-on.
Oh, sure. I'm so hands-on, but I also get, people always tell me, wow, the house really looked like that when my buyers walked in. It's not a falsification of photos.
It's also good to remind them to try and keep the house as clean as possible so they're ready for when anyone's coming to look at it, because we have to keep in mind that buyers also have jobs, and so sometimes they're available when you're going to be out of the house. So always leave the home in good condition so that if someone wants to see it, they're able to, and you're not saying, oh, wait, I get home at 5, I need to clean, because then you're also risking losing that buyer because they're going to move on to the next because they might need to buy as soon as possible.
That's an amazing point because I think it is actually the hardest part of being a listing agent is scheduling appointments. When somebody's like, oh, our house will be vacant, it's fine. I'm like, thank you, God, because it's really hard to navigate around families, dogs, all the things. But I have clients who are like, today just wasn't my day. I don't want to show it. And I'm like, I get that. But you're also asking me to sell your home, get you top dollar. That could have been our cash buyer.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been the deal. And you just, missed your opportunity. So if you are going to sell your home, I would say mentally be prepared to be, inconvenienced a lot, and have a house cleaned or have your cleaning lady come a little bit more often than she usually does.
The more showings, the more you're available to allow for showings, the faster your home will be sold.
1,000,000%. But it's funny that we have to explain that to people, but it is a problem. And I just had that where they would not allow the buyers to come multiple times. And I thought, well, your home sat on the market and you got crappier offers. And I tried.
So in this market, what would you say would be a good time frame for sellers to start getting ready? 2 months, 3 months, start decluttering, start cleaning. What would you say?
I think it depends on the scenario. We always meet people and, we live in an aerospace town. So some of these people get orders or, military, like they got to go. They need to get this. And that's actually one of our listings right now. They're military, got new orders. They're moving. So, I think that it depends on the scenario of days on the market and getting it ready. I would tell people yesterday was the time to list because of interest rates and home prices are so good right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on that. Emily has one where he's retiring soon.
Yes.
So for him, we don't want to have to make our clients move 3 or 4 times. But if we know the projection of the market's going to shift, exponentially soon, we also are their advisors on what their profit margin might be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, he actually came to me, 3 months ago and said, hey, I want to retire come,
Mm-hmm.
I think April 1st, I'm ready to be done. And I told him, you need to list by end of February, first week of March at the latest. He didn't really want to listen to me. He thought, oh, well, maybe I'll just stick around after I retire. And it wasn't until he got off the phone with his Medicare professional and she said, if you have this much money in your account, you're going to be in trouble. You need to be done and out of the house by May.
Yeah.
And moved.
And that's always the key. Because I have some clients, they're financially sound. Their home has been paid off for years. It's not all about the money. It's about the stressors we can cause in people's lives. So when I go to a listing appointment, I care so much about your story. What can I do for you? Tell me what's the most important key factors of this sale. Let's write them down and go from there. Because if it's money and you've only lived there for a few years and you need every penny of equity, we need to structure the sale accordingly. And I just had that one where they only lived there for less than 2 years. They're going to have to pay a little bit of capital gains. They knew that, but I knew that an agent coming in to negotiate on the price was not for us. So they listened to my advice and we got $20,000 over asking price.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, thank you, Ethan. So that's another thing. So we'll just go back to that. We got to get this accepted for, they found the house, the buyer or the listing agent accepted our buyer's offer. We're now trying to get this home sold. We have 14 days. We're telling them to clean. We're telling them to get ready. They need to show it. Is there anything else that we need to tell these sellers?
So I always have them say, I look at the awnings that you use and things like that, and I make sure that, if there's any wood that's exposed, I have them make sure that they paint it. I always recommend hiring the termite up front because then that way you know exactly what's going to happen, because most sellers are going to ask for that. And that way you know what you're going into. So there's less room for them to negotiate because we're already telling them what is going on with the property.
There's 2 sides to that because it kind of gets nerve-wracking because we know looking at something, it could be a problem. Again, as a realtor, we're never an expert. We're not air conditioning specialists. We're not termite specialists, but we have eyes to see things, right? You could tell if I actually went to a listing appointment and a roof tile actually flew out in front of my face. And I'm like, well, it needs a new roof. But they weren't in a hurry. And I said, you know what? If you want to get the most money for this home, you need a new roof. And I know you want to sell it as is, but a roof is one of those high negotiation things where their roofer might say $25,000 when we could get you a new roof for $7,000. So why are we going to put that, estimate into their hands. But with termite, I think it's amazing because the probability of somebody asking for one in this market is very, very high at this point. We know VA has to have one. So I think those are really great things. But sometimes sellers don't want to pay for anything or do a dang thing. We might get lucky. They might not ask for anything. The buyer, they don't even do a home inspection. So we want to gauge again the house. But I think, and Rocio's right, it's having all those and knowing things up front helps us guide the client more and not halt escrow because we're like, okay, now they need a termite repair. We waited till the last second and now we're here.
I have one thing that might not be super crucial, but I went into a home. I was showing a buyer, and their returns for their air conditioner, where they put the filters and everything in, were black, like they had not been cleaned or changed. So me walking into that tells me that they don't take care of their HVAC system. So that's one thing that I now going in, I'm going to be looking at for my sellers. Like, I don't want anybody to judge you the way that I judged this person. So maybe clean that.
Yeah, I tell people that, but unfortunately, we're not always at the luxury of people being clean or having the financial means to do those things. But again, it's our job to try to like stop a crisis before it happens. So if we know that there's black vents, we're like, either that AC works really well because you're using it all the time, or this thing's on its last leg. But I'll actually go out and, the house was built in 2003 and you look and the thing's rusty on the side of the house. It's never been replaced. And that's probably going to be an issue. And that's why I tell sellers up front too. And here's one of the things we need to tell them when we're, giving them the comps is, you're going to probably need to pay for a home protection plan for the buyers. It's a protection for you and it's a protection for the buyers so they don't come back and get pissed off at you every single time something breaks.
Right.
But a home warranty protection only covers AC, plumbing,
all electrical.
It depends on what you want to get. So there's some amazing programs out there that are going to do a roof. If you bought a new washer, dryer, and refrigerator, I tell my clients, I'm like, hey, instead of paying for that warranty at Best Buy or Home Depot, go back and call your warranty company, add that onto it because I think what's a warranty on a washer and dryer now? Like $400.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So you can for I think $100 add it to.
That's a great tip.
For the roofs, most of them only cover up to $1,005. The home warranties won't usually cover the whole cost of the roof replacement.
But then you would tell the buyer looking at that or the seller, be like, don't think that they're going to get a new roof because you gave them a $500 home protection plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that, again, that's us assessing the property, not being a professional inspector, but I think some agents come in with blindfolds on and it's so obvious because we get into the meat of our transaction. And I'm like, how did you not see this? How did you not know? And they're not representing their client well. And we're either going to eat them alive or we're going to cancel. And I try to eat them alive first. We're trying to get every dollar for our buyer at that point or a price reduction.
Right.
I would also remind the seller, I always double check the water heater straps because that's actually very common. There's a lot of listings I've had that they don't have the water straps.
The double
Amazing
straps.
point. Okay, what are the 3 things? Well, actually, there's 4, but what are the major things that appraisers are looking for? Sellers, you better be listening to this because this is a very valid point.
The heater has to be double strapped.
The water heater.
The water heater.
Yes.
Smoke detectors.
Not your heater.
Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors.
No. Okay. So where do you have to have smoke detectors now?
Every bedroom and in the kitchen.
The hallway,
And in the hallways, the main areas. Yeah.
And if you have a 2-story, you need how many carbon monoxides?
2. One
Two.
downstairs, one
And one
upstairs.
upstairs.
I thought
Okay,
you were going to
perfect.
ask about smoke detectors. I'm like, I thought I just said that.
They just failed that test. No. So, and the other thing is, and people don't think about this, but when you have you're going out to the garage from your laundry room area, that has to be a self-closing
Yeah.
door.
and fireproof
Right.
walls
Fireproof walls
and door. The
and door because that's how obviously you're protecting from death. So kind of a big deal. And I actually have one. They're putting a really large conventional down payment. They're really lackadaisical usually, but that still is requiring the governmental mandates of CO2s, smoke detector, earthquake straps.
And the last one would be that there is no exposed wood on the eaves and awnings.
That would be more VA. So that's a military buyer. So they're going to be the most
FHA as
strict.
well.
Chipped paint would be FHA. So it depends on the appraiser and what it's sometimes we can't figure out what they're going to call out appraisers. So I'm always telling my client, I'm like, I don't want you to spend money that's not necessary,
Because they may not even see
but
it.
it's cheaper to hire your own handyman up front than have this guy who came in and he's going to give you a quote, and it's going to be painful when you see that.
I do have a question. What do you do if the home, say it is an FHA buyer, and they don't have the double strapped water heater, they don't have the self-closing door, they don't have the carbon monoxide and smoke detectors, and your appraiser does not call it out?
Well, there's a box on the RPA, which is the purchase agreement, saying that you need to have those things. And if all parties agree to it, that seller or the agent would be liable for not having those things. And if they say, too bad, so sad, nobody called it out, I would show them the purchase contract, that box being checked and saying, actually, you need to do these things. And I had an agent do that to me once, and they said, too bad, so sad. And because I care about my client, I went out and bought those and I had them put in at the house because I thought, I don't want that on my conscience either. Expecting the other agent to do their job, we all know that's probably the hardest part of our job.
I actually had a listing agent counter ours back and say, no, we're not doing any of that. And they didn't have it. So I did the same thing. I said, no worries. That was literally the only thing they countered out. So I told my buyer, don't worry about it. I will buy you the carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. I could buy a pack from Home Depot.
Can you tell us what agent was that?
It was in Ridgecrest.
Yeah.
We don't want to work with them.
We have so many names to drop, but we can't, right?
Yeah. It was just in
We'll use
Ridgecrest.
code names. We'll make up nicknames.
How is that listing agent benefiting his client or her client in any way?
They don't care. That's what pains me. I'm like, how do you?
She didn't show up to anything during the whole process. I don't even think she lived in the city.
I had one recently. They're like, hi, I'm calling you for a photographer and this, that, and the other. Do you have a termite person? I'm in Orange County and I'm taking a listing out there. And I'm like, how are you going to do a good job for your client? And it I actually start feeling bad for their client, not even knowing them that this is going to be the experience they have. And
if you're going to be an agent for anyone in a different area that you don't have access to their MLS, get the MLS. Because if you don't, you're not a part of their local MLS, you're doing your clients a disservice. You should be a part of their MLS if you're going to take that listing.
Or refer it at some point. I have one right now. I just referred to my friend Dan in Walnut, California. He's an amazing realtor. I knew he'd do the best job for my client. And I thought, why would I put them in a hard spot? Because I'm trying to profit off of their backs, So I think it was more beneficial.
Yes.
Oh. Ethan, do we have a problem?
No, you're good.
Our cameraman.
Our cameraman, Ethan. It sounds like little squirrels back there. It's Ethan. So the other thing, too, we need to point out, and it's always like the hardest conversation we're going to have with our sellers is commission. Why? Well, we interviewed somebody that's a flat rate company. They're not going to care about your... There's so many things we could talk about behind people's backs, but they're not going to do the best job. And if they know they're only getting a flat rate commission, you need all this marketing done. We need to sell your home in 14 days. They don't have as much fire lit underneath them. And if you don't offer the buyer's side commission, because the seller is responsible for both buyer and seller's commission, if they're not willing to pay a good commission to that buyer's agent, you literally just forfeited a bunch of agents wanting to come to your home to show it.
That's one thing that we should probably clarify to sellers, because I don't think everybody knows that commission also goes to the buyer's agent and not only to the listing agent. So sometimes sellers feel like they're paying us 6% when we have to split that with the buyer's agent. So can you kind of like explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're going through, a buyer has their own closing costs and a seller has their closing costs. Your seller's closing costs are going to be title, half of escrow usually, your home protection plan, all of these things, but you're also responsible for the buyer's commission and the seller's commission. So that's both. So some people are like it's a 6% commission to sell your home. That's usually split 3 and 3, depending what brokerage you're at. Sometimes you get 2 and they take 4. We know who you are.
Rude.
We don't like it. But those are the things I tell my seller, and it depends too, because if they literally are riding the fine line of almost breaking even and they have to sell their home, obviously we're going to adjust the fees because we want to still get that sale and we want to represent them to the best of our ability.
I also think that they forget that we are actually paying for the photos. We are paying for marketing all up front from our pocket.
Lockbox, for sale sign,
Exactly.
flyers, 2 MLS systems. Facebook, Instagram ads. There's so many things.
And there's also taxes being paid on that. It's not like we're getting that whole amount, putting it in our pocket. We have to also pay taxes. So that's also accounted for in there.
And we have to pay our broker. And
more than that, we're paying for E&O insurance to cover their butts in a lawsuit. So when people say for sale by owner, all of these things, I mean, you're taking on a lot of risk that can end up costing you way more than a commission,
Right.
Yeah. So
maybe this is a great time to talk about misconceptions, because I feel like a lot of people think that listing agents, all they do is put up a for sale sign and wait for the house to sell, but don't realize all of the work that goes behind that.
yeah.
Aside from all the people that they are not like showing it to, because having it in the MLS adds it to Zillow, adds it to Realtor.com, adds it to all these different marketing areas that they are not, reaching out to.
It's syndicated to a lot of things that people don't realize, because if you go Google an address that's finally for sale because an agent put it up, it's also on their brokerage websites and it's on a lot of different things. But yeah, I think COVID is changing the game. And I think this is why it's important to talk to sellers, talk to other agents, because we're going to have to work with them too. You have to work now. That putting a sign out front during COVID, it did work. I could hammer a sign in without it on the MLS, and I had 25 offers. It was amazing. But that ship sailed, and now you have to work to get these homes sold. You have to know how to market a home. You have to know how to price it. You can no longer overpromise and underdeliver in this market. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to weed out some agents that aren't willing to do the work. But I know we hustle. All of us are working so hard to be honest and transparent, and it's huge.
Right.
Yeah. But let's go. So some more do's and don'ts for sellers. Is there anything else we can think of that are just something that we need to really put out there for them?
Don't be in the home while the realtor is hosting an open house. If you're in the home while you have buyers going in there, they're not going to be comfortable looking at the home because they know that that's your home, and they feel like they're going to criticize you, or they don't want to hurt your feelings. So if you're not in that home, that's a lot better for them, because then they can judge the home for themselves and not feel like, it's not as comfortable.
I feel like they're putting you out, kind of.
I've actually had a couple of buyers that they said no to seeing a house because the sellers were there. And my first time, I thought it was weird that they didn't want to see the house. I was like, oh, but they're going to step out. But they did not want to see the house at all because they were there.
Sometimes sellers have to be home. They have little kids. It's almost dinner time. This agent's late. But be gracious. Do not follow them around. I always tell my client, depending on the weather, just go stand out front. Go play with your kids in the yard. Take the dog for a walk.
Take your dogs out. Yeah.
So I actually had one showing. It was the craziest showing. I actually was buying at that time. So I was a buyer and I had hired an agent. I didn't do it myself. And we went in the home. We knew that they had renters that were living in there, but there was literally someone sitting in every single room in the house. I felt like I was going over them to view the home. So it definitely I wasn't able to really look at the home like I would normally have.
Did you buy that one?
No, I did not.
Yeah, that was probably why.
And that's the hard part too. Sellers have homes that are occupied by tenants. We can only control so much. But I tell the buyer too, that goes back on them. You have to visualize yourself after the fact. All that pretty decor goes. The weirdo tenant does not. We hope they never stay.
We hope they leave.
But those are really big points. I think that I think it's worse when a seller follows me around and will be like, oh, this, and then they can bat it, especially at a home inspection. Do not be there during a home inspection. You're going to get yourself sued by saying, oh, that works fine. And then we find out it doesn't. And it's your word against theirs. It's a hot mess and it's annoying.
That's funny when they bring the dad, the mom, the tia, the tío.
Leave your dad at home. Thank you.
Or when the seller is home during the appraisal.
You know what? I actually don't mind that.
No?
It depends on my client. So I'm the most psychological listing agent ever, because if I know that my seller has the cutest kids on the planet and all of these things, and you don't appraise my house right, you're just a bad person at that point. So I always try to think of how to manipulate the situation. I just hit myself with the mic. I'm very passionate about this, but you have to manipulate the situation in your favor as an agent. So I'm always thinking of different ways. So that's what I would say. Let's go to the listing appointment. Let's write down their story. Let's find out what's going to suit them best, what their major points are in the sale. And if we hit like 2 of the 3 or 5 of the, 7. We're doing really well as listing agents. But now we got this one. They got their offer accepted. We sold their house. They're in their new home. They're so happy. They told 5,000 of their friends how amazing we are. So I'm excited for that. But now we're back at your client who is retiring in a few months.
Yes.
He's finally listing his home.
Yes.
But when he wanted to talk to you how many months ago, his home was probably worth like 30, 40 grand more.
Actually, it's worth more now.
Is it worth more now?
Yes. When he first talked to me, we were looking at 440, 450. Now we're listing at 469.9.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
real. Hey, then the market's changing back. But I guess
Yeah.
it's true because how many months ago rates were?
Yeah,
What year
rates
back
were
up?
crazy.
What area is it in also?
It's in West Lancaster, kind of over by the college a little bit. J8 and 25th West.
Very desirable.
Yeah.
Mhm. Very
that's,
nice.
That's the other thing too is, and I'm going back on my own point, but if we just came out of the holiday season, there's less comps to compare to. So now that I think you said a few more just recently sold.
Yes.
So that's probably what pushed the price back
Yes.
up, which is great.
Yeah, and the highest one that sold is actually an older home than the one that I'm listing.
The area has a
So,
lot to do with it because it's
Mhm.
by the college. A lot of people want to be there. Parents buy
It's-
homes there for their kids, things like that.
it's walking distance to the middle school in that neighborhood right there.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's all of that is important. I think for me, just thinking about somebody who calls me and they're like, we want to list in how many months, I can't in good consciousness tell them, okay, that's fine, without telling them, hey, we're watching the news. We know that there's a projection of rates going up, all of the things. What are your top things that you need? Is it money? Is it this? Some of my clients are like, we don't want to move 3 times. For me, it's not worth the headache. I go, then it's not financial need. But if you need every penny because you're retiring and that's all you have, inconveniences you might just have to be inconvenienced and move twice.
You know what I think it's so funny that I have submitted a couple of offers before, and when I do, I call the listing agent to try to get a little bit more info so that my offer is stronger. And I asked a question, besides money, what's important for your seller? And most of the time, listing agents do not know what to say, but that's because they don't know their story. They're just trying to sell. So I'm like, okay, you don't really know your client that well.
That breaks my heart. I've actually been, and I know all of you because we talk about our deals. We feel sad for the other person's clients so much. And you're grateful that I have a big heart because I don't want to take advantage of people. But if you did not do your due diligence and it's my job to represent my client, we're going full force on you, but who you hire matters so much.
Yes.
So these are the conversations we want to have with our clients. I think it's always nerve-wracking knowing you have a client in the future that is thinking about moving because you're like, please don't talk to another realtor. Please don't meet anybody at Starbucks in line and hope possibly list with them. But I do feel, to your point, Elizabeth, if I'm having that conversation, I'm asking about their cares and their needs, they're more likely to call me back because they know I care, not just trying to get a sale. And that's the other misconception is the bad agents. I think these are the misconceptions of, well, so-and-so told me I could get 60,000 more than you're telling me.
Mm-hmm.
I want proof that agent can do that. Where are their comps coming from?
Mm-hmm.
What made them think that? Are they just telling you that to get you to sign on the contract and have you do 8 price reductions? Probably. So
I was just telling you that story with my client last year. I quoted them a price. And I told them if you guys list at this time, and they were on title with their parents, and the parents wanted to hire a realtor who was willing to drive to Las Vegas every single weekend to have something signed because they refused to do anything digitally. And that agent promised them, I can list it for much more than what this other person told you. So the parents started drooling and they signed a contract. That home sat on the market for over a year in the middle of COVID times when it should not have sat on the market. And it sold for $20,000 less than what I originally quoted them.
I don't know any agent that what seller is signing a year-long contract.
Yeah, she kept renewing it for them. And I told them, you guys need to get out of this contract. And it wasn't up to the people that wanted me to represent them. It was the parents because
Yeah, that's
took
really hard.
control.
But, we can only control so much.
Yeah.
But that's one of the other things, too, is okay, what if I list my home for 500. I know it's worth 480. Should I just do a couple price reductions in hopes to get 500? The answer is absolutely not. No, it is, I don't want to, I call it something I probably shouldn't, but it's a real estate no, because you will probably get less. Because if I see a home that's done 3 price reductions, my first thought is, well, let me write a lower offer. They're obviously willing to adjust their pricing.
What about when you explain, you show them evidence, you do all of this for them to list it at a certain price, but their idea is, no, my house is worth this much and this is what I want to list it at?
I would give them a time frame and say, okay, let's list it what you have, and in 2 weeks, if we have no showings, because we won't, or you get a crappy offer, like all of those things, and let's talk about it. And I want your word right now that you'll be willing to adjust the price. Because sometimes they say, I'm not taking $1 less, and I'm not doing that, and this is what I want. You don't want to sell your home. And that's what I remind them. I'm like, it sounds like you don't want to sell because you're not willing to. Buyers dictate the market. We're only as good as what buyers are going to think your home is worth. And if you're not willing to entertain that, then you're not ready to sell.
And that's put into the listing contract. So that way in 2 weeks, if it doesn't sell, then you're able to adjust.
Do you ever say no? When they're like, nope, this is how much I want to list it for, and you're like, I know it's not going to sell for that much. Do you ever say no?
Absolutely. Because again, we are paying for all of those marketing things. And it's really frustrating when I know that I paid for video, photos, and it's not just money, it's my time.
Yeah.
How many calls have I taken to schedule or entertain this home on multiple occasions? And now you're not willing to budge. It's rude, in my opinion. So that's why I tell them, I'm like, if you're being really unrealistic, then I'm probably not the agent for you. You should call that flat fee brokerage and have them do it.
I have a question. You have a seller that thinks that their memories in their home are valuable. How do you navigate that?
Ooh.
Remind them they're going to make new memories in another home.
Oh, that's a good
And
one.
it's time for a new person to make memories in that home.
So take your
I
shit.
say Barbara. Barbara, nobody cares, because little Timmy swimming in the pool doesn't matter to the new person.
Right.
And memories are amazing, but I remind them, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get possibly a few offers. If you want to pick the one that has a family because that matters to you, then, that's up to you guys what you find most valuable in the offers. But we can't sell your memories of Timmy learning to swim in your pool.
And they might not need to sell then. If the memories are worth more than them selling, then they probably shouldn't be selling.
Honesty is key. Like a lot of these things we're touching on is because we're transparent and honest throughout the process. I like to really take into consideration and say, I love that you have memories here. My parents still live in the home they've lived in for over 20 years. I get how important that is. But at the end of the day, once you drive off with that U-Haul, it's amazing how much that changes.
It's a new beginning.
It's a new beginning. And we need to remind them that, you're selling all of it, and then what's really sweet is you could get them like a book made of all the photos you took and send that to them after and just say, here's pictures of your home. They'll probably never open it or look at it, but there's little things that we could do to make our clients happy.
And I feel like once sellers cash out, they're like, peace out. I don't care about this house. I'm getting a better one
The
anyways.
stress of the sale, they're like, I never love this place anyways. But okay, so one other thing that we should talk about is solar. Should we advise our clients to pay off their solar, get solar? Solar is, in the last 10 years of real estate, solar used to be like the thing you dreaded the most. Obviously, it's a lot more common now, and it's a good thing, right? Electric bills are going up, gas bills, everything's really high. But
Yeah.
with solar on a roof, my biggest thing I'm going to ask the seller at the listing appointment is, how much do you owe on the solar panels? Because sometimes it's to their advantage just to pay off the entire system to get more for their house.
Oh, okay.
As a solar owner who has sold a home with solar that had a lien on it that we were still paying monthly, we definitely got more for our home when we agreed to pay them off through.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say with the
Oh.
lease, because that's
Yeah.
the other thing you have to consider. And if you're selling your home or you have a buyer for that home, that buyer has to qualify for the loan of the solar.
And remember, that'll affect how much they're able to buy. So if they have another
Yes.
payment for solar, they might not even afford your home because now they have to add that other payment.
Absolutely. So if you're qualified to 500, the house is 500 and there's solar, you're not qualifying. So you just now, you got rid of a large buyer pool. And you'd be surprised because people are like, well, if they can't afford it, it's like, well, that's actually everybody. People go buy at their max all the time. So that's
Right.
just the way Americans work. And they just like to spend all their money. So that's something to consider. If you think you're selling your home within the next year or two, or even less, I would say less than 3 years, I don't advise you getting solar because I don't know if you reap the benefits as quickly. It depends on your credit and what you negotiated with that solar company.
And as a listing agent, always ask your client to give you the contract up front, ask them for your utility bill, ask them information on the solar so that when someone's coming in, you know what to tell them that payment is, you know what they're using, or you know what difference it is. So that way everyone knows, because if you don't know that information, it's going to be hard for anyone to buy that home.
Absolutely.
You could even put that in the private remarks on the MLS too. So it's upfront out there in the open. And if somebody, they're not even going to waste their time if they don't think it's beneficial to them.
Yeah. And I don't think assuming a lease is a negative thing because a lot of people, you know, if it's $145 a month for that solar and it's covering your bill, then I don't know anybody who has a $145 electric bill these days. So it's
Especially
not negative.
in the summertime.
But I really liked what you said because one time I went to a showing and the listing agent had all of the utility bills on the kitchen counter, solar, electricity, water, everything. So when we walked in and the buyers were looking at all of that, they were like, perfect. All of my questions were answered. So no, it was full transparency and everything is there. And I mean, why hide it?
Because
if
it
they're
is-
gonna
it is what, you know, people ask you, how much is
Christy
the water bill?
Lumpus.
And I always remind them that it depends on how many people are in their home because, you know, I let them know. So there's 4 people in this home. Depending if there's going to be 6, your bills are obviously going to be higher, but it does help them get an estimate of around what they could be spending.
Absolutely. Because I just had one who was a huge house as a stay-at-home mom who has her girls home with her all day. They're using a ton of electricity and their solar covered their entire bill. And they actually got like a refund towards the end of the year. So I thought this solar system this is a great, you know, case scenario because, you know, it's not people who are at work all day, never run the AC, all of that. This is somebody who's using a lot. So it's important. Definitely ask those questions. And that's also why we run title reports for our sellers so we can know if there's any liens or any issues with that as well. We're always checking in with Ethan to make sure we're doing okay. One of and I don't know how we haven't talked about this yet for the misconception because I want to make it number 1. So I'd like to redo this and say number 1. Zestimates.
I was going to ask, but I was like, I'll just wait.
No, you're right, Rocio, because it should have been like, hi, welcome to episode 2 Zestimates.
What's a Zestimate?
It's a
Zillow
quote
estimate
from the devil.
It's a fake estimate on Zillow.
Because it actually pisses me off more than anything because they're not ever right. I don't think they're ever right.
Where do they get their numbers from?
We don't know. It's like from the sky.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a speculation. I think they see what everything closes for in the surrounding areas.
But they don't know if
and-
you've ever upgraded your home,
Exactly.
if you
They
have a
don't know
new
what the interior
AC,
looks
if you
like.
have termite rot from 1986 on your home.
Yeah,
they don't know.
sometimes those pictures are from like 5 years ago. So it's not a really good, accurate depiction of what it's worth.
Absolutely. So the estimates, the other thing that is, I know it's skewed is my sellers always call me, hey, since we listed, my Zestimate went up $25,000. And I'm like, Lord, help me. Because it's not, they're skewing it. And the minute you put up a new listing, they try to match it so everybody's happy and they change it based off of that. Hence what Rocio said earlier, Zillow's been in hot water for years. It's a great place to look for homes. They are getting them syndicated from the MLS. You get to see every single thing that is for sale. But it is inaccurate and Zillow's wrong.
Do you think it's a good idea to bring it up to sellers when we go to our listing appointment? That way they know, hey, you may see some changes on Zillow, but do not think that's accurate.
It's gospel,
and that
I think it's really awesome, but I've never actually had to bring up Zillow to my clients ever because they tell me about Zillow. And it's a great segue to say, let me tell you a few misconceptions about Zillow. And if you don't believe me, let's watch it for the next 30 days because you're going to see that your home price has changed with a 15% variance in both directions.
I always remind them that they don't have accurate information because it's not part of our MLSs. And that is where you're going to get the accurate information. And I remind them appraisers don't use Zillow. So they use our system, our MLS.
Yeah.
And then that always helps. Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Could you imagine appraisals if we just went off what Zillow said? I don't know if we'd ever sell a house. Or sellers would be very angry because most of the time you're getting less. I feel like I don't see Zillow representing the house as well But if your neighbor did do, travertine flooring, brand new AC, move-in ready, brand new kitchen, quartz counters, and you have not upgraded your home, you have to, I can't help a seller that's unrealistic. You need to know in your heart that you have not upgraded this home since, 1995. Most sellers are aware, but realistically, like we have to change that. Credits versus pricing. I think that goes back to us talking about appraised value, because if you're going to some agents call and say, hey, my client needs 3% closing costs, but your seller's not willing to budge. And they go, well, we'll write the offer for $515 instead of $500. But it's only going to appraise for max $505. You're doing your seller a disadvantage, because they're not going to, if it doesn't appraise, the buyer doesn't have the money, and the seller is not going to be willing to come down 10 grand on the price. So those are big things to look for. And it's your responsibility to tell the seller that, because they're going to hate you at the end if they're making less money on the home that you talk them into, pretty much taking that offer.
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things I could talk about getting your home ready and selling it, different case scenarios, but just always remember talking to your seller, getting to know their story, getting to know them, what's important to them, on all levels, and then, doing your job, marketing it and getting it sold.
And being upfront with buyers instead of trying to hold things to the end. It's always better for them to have all the details and information up front, so that you're not in the end of closing 5 days and then they say, you know what, this was never told. I didn't know this happened. That way they know everything and there's no wiggle room for trying to back out.
Communication, transparency, all the things are really important, and setting the right expectations.
And sellers, trust your real estate agent. You hired them for a reason.
And I would also recommend interview a bunch of agents. Because everyone offers everyone is going to offer you a different service. Depending on you, what you want, your needs, then you're going to find the best agent for you.
I don't want them to ever talk to another realtor personally.
I would be like, nope, I'm your one.
I do. I want them to go talk to as many as they can.
The problem is there's so many liars out there.
It's okay.
And I agree. I think that, but it's been a compliment to me, and it's happened to me so many times. They go, hey, we're going to interview multiple agents. And I go, with your confidence, I go, please do. I know that what I'm telling you is truth. And by the end of our meeting, they cancel the other appointments.
Yeah, they're like, I don't want to talk to them anymore.
I very rarely, they go, okay, we're going to talk to 2 other agents. They usually that day call me back and say, hey, my wife doesn't even want to waste our time. We want to go with you. When's your photographer available?
No, I get what you're saying, but my way of thinking is like, go ahead, interview as many people as you want.
We're not insecure about what we're telling them. Yeah. I agree. But I really don't want them to, in my heart. So if you can get that person to sign that contract, let's get it going. Let's not waste time, because we only have 72 hours to get your home on the market. So.
That is true.
Anyways, but thank you guys for tuning in to episode 2, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.